Welcome back, everybody. If you're new, my name's Nicholas, and this is Investing Against the Grain. In today's episode, we have three topics to talk about. First, we're going to talk about a potential new Model Y variant that we haven't seen before. We'll discuss that in a little bit. It'd be coming out of Giga Austin, so that's pretty exciting. Two, we're going to talk about Ford declining sales. And we're going to see why this keeps happening, and it has nothing to do with COVID, in my opinion, and it has nothing to do with Russia and Ukraine or any of that, again, in my opinion. But we're going to go a little deeper into this and see what things are looking like year after year after year. And then finally, we're going to stay on this thread of talking about Ford Motors, and we're going to take a look at Ford's new attempt to get some deliveries out there without completed vehicles. Before we get into it, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, and let's get into it. Let's begin this with this new potential Model Y variant that we're seeing. If we take a look over here, this was a recent EPA release or approval for Tesla, and the rumor has it that this would be coming out for Giga Austin. I believe that's where the application was put out for this EPA approval. The application actually went out in early February, and it was just recently approved. But take a look at this. You can see the different variations that Tesla has had already. You can see the Model Y rear-wheel drive standard. Okay, we know about that. We know about the Model Y all-wheel drive long range. Again, we know about that one already. And we look at the very last one here, we can see the Tesla Model Y Performance all-wheel drive. Again, we've known about those variants. But now, out of nowhere, we have this 2022 Tesla Model Y all-wheel drive. So the thought here is that this is a standard version. Okay, so just like you can see the one on the far left here, this is a standard version. It's just called Tesla Model Y rear-wheel drive. The long and the performance are titled accordingly. But then we have this new one. And so what's very interesting about this new variant is that if you look down below, ignore the 123 mpge. If you don't know what that is, that's essentially just the miles per gallon equivalent. And the way that's measured is actually in BTUs, or British thermal units. So it's essentially just a measurement of heat. But ignore that. If you look down below, it's much easier. On the bottom right, you can see what the actual miles or total range for the vehicle is. And you can see that this is 279 miles. Well, why is that potentially a very big deal? Well, again, if we compare this all-wheel drive, which we can only, we can infer that it's a standard version compared to the standard version on the far left. Well, that only has 244 miles of range. So not sure what's happening here, but this is definitely going to be coming out of Giga Austin, whatever this variant is. It could be that it has a 4680 battery in it. I don't think it does, though. I think it's more likely that this has the LFP batteries within it. So what I think could be happening here is that Tesla is leveraging LFP batteries with the structural pack, and that's what this application is for. We know that the 4680 batteries haven't really ramped up to volume, and so I think that's my initial reason of why I don't think this has to do with 4680. Not to mention 4680 batteries have nickel in them, so you would naturally think that they'd have longer range, hence the long range or the performance models. Now, I could be 100% wrong about this. This is just me completely trying to make an inference here. But I think with the LFP batteries, that's what Tesla's been using or has planned all along to use for the standard ranges. So would be exciting. 279-mile range for a standard range. I mean, that would be excellent. That would be phenomenal range. So this is something exciting to keep an eye on. And hopefully come April 7th, once we have the Giga Fest, the opening of Giga Austin, that we'll get more color on this. I'd be very surprised if we don't. So this is pretty exciting. And this is, again, going to be coming out of Giga Austin. Now, before we get into some of the other stuff, let's touch on Giga Berlin real quick, because we did get some news out of Giga Berlin. So let's read this tweet, because this is a quick cliff notes of what I'm about to show you. So Giga Berlin, Tesla, details on D-Day. So in other words, the big event that's going to happen on March 22nd, the delivery day. Big show expected, 4,000 guests expected, the first 30 Model Ys to be delivered. Elon will possibly be in attendance, and customers to see their Teslas come off the line to music of their choice, right? So that should be pretty fun. But let's look at the actual note here. This may be hard for you guys to see or read, so I'm just going to read it real quick, kind of give you the highlights of it. This doesn't take long, but I think there's some cool information here. This week, for some, and then more and more German buyers of the Tesla Model Y Performance received a request to enter the last data before delivery. This is usually a sign that delivery is approaching, and in this case also means that the production of saleable Model Ys from German Gigafactory is imminent. I know we've been saying that for a long time, but it feels like this is actually going to happen this time. So hopefully it really is imminent. Initially, only the performance versions will be produced there, and Tesla is still requesting data from its customers. Some of them also received a call this week inviting them to a big event around the handover of the Model Y Performance and the factory near Berlin. Customers see their Tesla come off the assembly line. You can tell this is translated a little bit here. But so that's exciting. So customers are actually going to see it come off the line. I wonder how far into the production they'll already be before they receive delivery. But either way, this is pretty exciting. Maybe this will give us an idea of what the current run rate is kind of what I'm thinking. Earlier, Tesla internally informed the workforce about a delivery day at the factory site on March 22nd and asked for registrations for it. The event starts at 3 p.m. according to the email, but that is only the last part of it. One of the customers invited to pick up the Model Y provided teslamag.de with Tesla's information about it, including the program. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., the item festivities is in it. But the delivery day in Grünheim starts already at 9 o'clock, so 9 a.m. local time, and seems to be organized by Tesla as a big show. Thus, the invited buyer confirmed that on that day, according to Tesla, the first 30 Model Y Performance from the German factory will be handed over to customers. They will even be able to watch their electric cars roll off the production line, he had been told on the phone. The fresh Model Ys will be officially handed over to the customers from 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. to music of their choice. But they will not be allowed to drive them themselves just yet. First, the cars will be parked for a group photo at 3 p.m. and then followed by the festivities to which employees are also invited. In the program, from 1 p.m., according to the statement, this will be the brief address from key decision makers for the Gigafactory permitting progress, and CEO Elon Musk will possibly also be on hand. So lots of good stuff there. I mean, that's pretty exciting. It's awesome to see that, all these details around it just make you feel like it's actually going to happen. It seems like things are go with Giga Berlin. I think that, we're actually going to start seeing things produce. Again, I think at this point we're 6 days away from production being able to get going, and then I guess 9 days until this actual event. So very exciting things going on there. All right, let's transition over to talking about Ford. So Ford, in my opinion, has a very big problem, and I think they've had a problem for quite some time now. Okay, I'm not saying this is the death of Ford yet, but I do think Ford has a big issue on their hands, and this is, I think, a big part of why they went ahead and created Ford Blue and Ford Model E, right? The two new divisions within Ford to essentially isolate out the internal combustion engine division and their new electric vehicle division. So take a look at this this chart here. So this bar graph is a representation of essentially wholesale global sales for Ford vehicles going back from 2009 all the way to 2021. Okay, so these are entire year aggregates. And so you can see if we start at 2009, we're sitting here at about 4.8 million vehicles sold globally. And then, we trucked up higher and higher all the way up until about 2015, where Ford sold about 6.6 million vehicles. Ever since 2015, Ford has been declining in sales. So, and the numbers don't lie. Take a look at this. 6.6 million, 6.6 million, right? So not too much of a drop off, but then boom, 5.9 million in 2018. We head into 2019, 5.3 million. We head into 2020. This is where maybe you say, hey, this is all COVID related. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There's obviously some disruption, but I don't think everybody's having those disruptions, namely Tesla. So here we can see 4.1, and then we can see in 2021, it dropped to 3.9 million vehicles. Okay, and the bigger problem is that now Ford is talking about even more declines in sales. So what's happening here? Is this all purely to do with shortages, battery shortages, chip shortages, supply chain issues? Does it have to do with COVID? Does it have to do with Russia, Ukraine? right? There's a lot of metals. Does it have to do with palladium coming out of Russia for the catalytic converters, right? There's many things that could be, contributing to this, but I would be very careful to assume that that's all this is. And this is mainly for anybody who's out there and is an adamant Ford investor. Look, you could make the argument that a lot of this has to do with COVID and Ukraine and Russia and all that drama, all the macro issues. But what you can't, really refute is that from 2015 to 2019, there's no real reason to believe that any of those macro events had any issues on Ford. So why the decline in sales? I think this is something that you should be cautious of. And let's pit this against Tesla. So if we take a look here, we can see what Tesla looks like in the same way we're looking at it. Not quite as long, right? We're going to go from 2012 all the way to 2021, but this is what the chart looks like for Tesla. Now, I get it. Everybody, you can easily comment down below, say, oh, well, it's a lot easier. They have less vehicles and all this stuff. But is it easier? Is it easier for Tesla? I mean, think about it. They're doing everything revolutionary. Their supply chains, they essentially had to create them themselves. There wasn't this big mass electric vehicle market. Batteries are hard to come by. It was hard to get people to invest in batteries, to produce more batteries, right? There's a lot of headaches that Tesla had to go through with this. So I wouldn't necessarily say that the challenge is as hard. Ford already had all their supply chains and everything in place. All they needed was demand for people to buy, right? They didn't have an issue of producing vehicles. Tesla had a production issue. So if you ask me, that's it. Well, if I was a company, I'd rather have a production issue rather than a demand issue. But my point is, Ford had the production in hand. They had no issues with production. It seems like they were having a demand issue. Tesla is the inverse of that. They are just purely production constrained, right? That's the bottleneck. But nevertheless, look at this chart. I mean, this chart doesn't lie, all right? And not only, and if you were going to make the small numbers argument, my refute to that is, if this was only a chart looking like this because they had small numbers, well, then why is it growing faster and faster every single year? Why are the numbers getting bigger and bigger? Look, at this point, we're at 1 million vehicles for Tesla. Ford right now is selling about 3.6 million vehicles a year. At this rate, next year, Tesla could surpass Ford in total global sales. Next year, think about that. This is the small EV company. And Tesla is still making 30% margins on each vehicle or each car they make. And this is before we assume anything with full self-driving. So the numbers are getting kind of wacky here for Tesla, right? This is getting kind of nutty. But I think it's important to understand what's happening. The movement is happening. EVs only have about 3% penetration in the United States. In China, I think it's about 9 or 10% penetration. So there's so much room for Tesla to grow in all these markets. There's not a real EV market, I would say as well. There's an automotive market. And so if you look at it from that lens, what you see is that Tesla has a lot of runway to go. They barely saturated any. I mean, you can't even call this saturation, right? This is nothing. So I would be very nervous if I was Ford, especially considering where they are right now, right? They sold what, under 30,000 vehicle or electric vehicles last year. GM, same thing. Like they have a long way to go. Meanwhile, Volkswagen's sitting there selling 500,000 electric vehicles last year. So when people talk about who's in the lead, where things are, it's very clear that Tesla's number one, Volkswagen's number two, and everybody else should be scared. And mainly they should be scared of what's happening in China, because China is rolling. These Chinese EV companies, whether it's BYD, whether it's NIO, whether it's XPeng, they are the companies to watch out for. They will be the new Japanese companies coming into the United States, right? That's what they're going to be. This is going to be the same thing all over. History repeats itself. It'll just be a different country, different manufacturers. All it's going to be. Okay, last thing I want to touch on is this from Ford. So Sawyer Mayer, he broke this news, or at least he was the first one that I saw put this out there. But essentially, it reads, Ford will ship and sell vehicles without chips controlling non-safety critical features. Ford executive told dealers the company would provide the missing parts for dealers to install within 1 year. So I don't hate this. I saw a lot of people talking about how, Ford's going to ship a vehicle without tires and things of that nature, kind of poking fun at them. I think this is a smart move from Ford. If it's not a safety critical part, if it's not something that's needed for certain regulatory things or airbags or anything that's safety related, I think this is a smart move. I mean, who cares if there's the chips that you need for your passenger seat can't go forward or backwards if you can just do it manually. I mean, I don't know exactly what they're thinking as far as what parts might be missing, but if it's something that kind of not critical and you can get a sale of the vehicle, and on the back end, once things are better with the supply chain, you can go back and fix it. Why not do it, right? Especially from a consumer perspective, a consumer would probably rather say, yeah, I don't care about this given function or this one part if it means I get my vehicle now, right? People are sick of waiting for things that they bought a long time ago. And I think even Tesla is starting to do this. Not quite at this scale, right? Tesla is doing it more with their full self-driving. For those of you who don't know, Tesla sells every single vehicle with all of the hardware required for full self-driving. And so what that means is that you have to have redundancy for everything essentially, including the main computer, the full self-driving, the autonomous vehicle capable computers that are built by Tesla. And so you have two of them, and they act as redundancy for each other. Now, what Tesla has started to do, I believe, in China is go ahead and take some of the chips out from having those two computers because, again, FSD beta, it's not live in China. They're not beta testing in China right now. So what they're doing now is instead of having both computers in there, they're using those extra chips for other parts within Tesla, within their vehicles. So it allows them to be more efficient with the chips they have, especially if it's something that everybody isn't using right now actively. Now, long term, obviously Tesla would have to go back and replace this and mitigate this for full self-driving. But until that's a reality, or at least a reality in China, it doesn't make sense to not be as efficient as we can be when there's such a shortage of chips in the world. All right, Tesla needs to do everything they can to be as economical and as efficient as they can and produce as many vehicles as is humanly possible. Again, there's only so many chips being produced in the world right now, so that's the limiting factor. When that's your bottleneck, that's your limiting factor, well then you have to do certain things. And so I kind of applaud Ford for what they're doing here. As long as they do it in the right way, as long as they're transparent with their customers, as long as they hold true to their word, which could be a tricky thing because they say within 1 year, but how do you know if you're going to have the supply chain for that, right? I mean, as a customer, I'd want some kind of reassurances around that. But again, that's Ford's dealings with their customers and customer service and things of that nature. And hopefully they do right by them. All right, so those are some news, some things I saw that I thought were interesting for today's Sunday. Bigger picture for this coming up week, it's going to be very interesting, right? I think the whole market's going to be pretty much on hold until Wednesday, which is when we get the Fed results or the Fed decision on what they're going to do with interest rates. I think it's pretty clear that we're going to see a 25 basis point hike in March, and I think the Fed may even start to spin their wording to be a little more dovish. If this happens, and if the Fed starts to spin their words more dovish, I think that we could actually see the stock market react positively to this news moving forward. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen with the Fed. We never know what's going to happen. For all we know, they might decide to, hike it up by 50 basis points, and that sends stocks reeling down south, or it could be the inverse. Maybe they decide not to do anything. And I think that as well would be a negative for the markets because the stock market doesn't like uncertainty. So the more they kick the can down the road, that means more uncertainty built in. So I think the best outcome for this meeting, these announcements from the Fed, their decision would be for 25 basis point and predictability of what to expect moving forward. Other things that we have to look out for is Ukraine and Russia. We don't know what to expect from that, all right? I'm hoping, my optimistic self is hoping that we can get to a resolution in the next couple weeks. I'm hoping that there can be a ceasefire, an agreement. Obviously, nothing's going to end without some kind of, win for Putin, right? He needs to get something out of this. And I think the one thing that Zelensky can give him to essentially ease his ego for the Russian people and everything would be for Putin to one, get the Ukraine's not going to join NATO, it's not going to join the EU, and also for Ukraine potentially to go ahead and say, okay, we can consider Crimea part of Russia or something along those lines. I think that's the only way Putin would be able to get out of this without any, I guess, embarrassment, because if Putin is going to be embarrassed, this is never going to end. All right, so it's almost like you have to stroke this guy's ego to stop war and death out there. So hopefully we can get to that. I think if combined with that, plus if the Fed can do some good things and say the right things and go about this with the right words, I think all of this could have a very positive reaction in the stock market moving forward. And just in general, in the world, right, the macros can kind of calm down. People can kind of relax. We can step away from talking about nuclear destruction or World War III and Great Depressions and things of that nature. I mean, it seems like the fear index is as high as it's ever been. The pessimism from everyone is as low as it's ever been. And I think people are kind of getting sick and tired of being in this place. So these things don't last forever. These things do eventually end. So, I guess that's the upside to all of this. All right. So with that said, after we get done with the Fed and, hopefully we get more clarity with Russia and Ukraine, from then on, it's almost like just, every week there's something to look forward to with Tesla. Okay. I mean, even today, right? Today, I think, it didn't happen last night, so maybe it'll happen tonight where we get FSD 10.10.11 or 10.11 maybe. I don't even know where we're at anymore. But that would be great. And then the following week, after the Fed meeting, we'll have the Giga Berlin event. And then you have the Austin event. You have delivery numbers. You have quarterly earnings and anything else, right? Any great results from the new version of FSD. I mean, from then on, it's like, a lot of excitement in the markets when it comes to Tesla. So things to be excited about, and again, I know this is a more optimistic take in a world where everything seems to be going wrong left and right, but there's no sense on being pessimistic because that doesn't do you any good either. So I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for peace. I'm hoping for the markets to recover. I'm hoping for Tesla to get the valuation they deserve. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do. All right. So that's what's going on for this week. Those are things I'm keeping an eye on. But at the end of the day, just remember, if you woke up today, if you had a roof over your head, if you had food in your fridge, if you had loved ones to hang out with, you're winning, okay? That means you're winning, and those are things to really focus on, especially whenever everything else seems to be going wrong. All right, we're going to leave it there for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that bell. Also, if you guys have any ideas or anything you want me to touch on, feel free to leave a comment down below. I read all your comments. I try to reply to as many of them as I can. It's a one-man show here when it comes to the comments and things like that. Of course, we always have my fiance behind the camera and doing all the thumbnails and everything. So it's just the two of us trying to get to all of this. So we will try to get to as many of those comments. But again, any ideas, any things you want me to cover, let me know. It helps us come up with more ideas, more topics to cover. But we're going to leave it there for today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace.